Not exactly sure why I did this, but I recorded a bunch of clips of me using Firestorm, just playing with one of my older builds, my Pyromancy build. This is another one of those builds that's just like stupid fun. It's up there with Frog in terms of like my favorite builds that I've made. And so I just played and just did some invasions, I guess. Wasn't streaming, just having a good time. And I use Burn O Flame a lot, which is sort of like Firestorm from the old Souls games, if you're familiar. And it's always been one of my favorite spells because it's just the coolest thing in the world. And a lot of times, I'll make builds that revolve around hitting spells that are like regarded as hard to hit, like Bloody Talons, or I'm sorry, Blood Flame Talon, or Carrying Greatsword, or Burn O Flame. And people often ask, like, how do you hit people with it? Because it's hard to hit people with it. And the answer is, first and foremost, just try. Especially, like, you know, like when I'm making a video and I know I'm going to like try and like put together like a cohesive narrative across, you know, the course of whatever, like 10 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever it is. Just do it. Just go for it and just see what happens and live with the results. You will be surprised how often players who don't know what they're doing will get hit by it, and you'll be surprised at how often players who do know what they're doing still manage to get hit by it because it's just not something that they see a lot. So first, just try it. Just do it. The more you do it, the more you learn about it, and the more you kind of start to piece together how it can work. In the case of Blood Flame Talons, in the case of O Flame, in Carrying Greatsword, a lot of times it's very picky to turn and burn with those types of spells, but a lot of times you can hit those as like turn and burns. The problem with using them solely, if you're just trying to use them as like a turn and burn technique, the problem is that if someone is using Moonveil, or any katana with Unsheath, really, it's just impossible to turn and burn. You cannot turn and burn Moonveil. It's just, you can't. So, like, you have to find another way to try and do it. A lot of times, players who are very skittish will roll, but if they're aggressive and skittish, they'll try and roll forward. So, like, something like O Flame, where you get to charge it, that still manages to work out in your favor. But the other thing that I have found with Burn O Flame is it works really well after a backstab. You can't charge it, not fully. Just press it. Just press the button and go. And that works a lot. And I don't mean like 50% of the time. I would say like 70. Like, it works a lot. It's very nice. It doesn't work all the time, but it does work a lot. And then, of course, the other option is, you know, just set a trap. You're invading. You know, you're not supposed to sit there and fight 3 people in one space where they're safe from enemies and everything else. You know, they're supposed to be on edge a little bit. So yeah, just use Burn O Flame, Carrying Greatsword, Blood Flame Talons, O Flame. Spells like that are great for like setting a trap, even a trap that your opponent sees through. As you just saw, like that blue totally had that spotted and still fell for it. Well, he didn't fall for it, but he still got hit by it. This invasion is this is one of those ones where these 2 players together are like really, really competent, and they get separated right here. The host has now fallen off of this platform, and it's just the Phantom. And to be fair, this Perfumer is a badass. So, you know, no disrespect, but like it's hard for them now. Like, they were playing as a unified front, like, pretty well together, And then as soon as it became 1 versus 1, it's so much more manageable. And the Lindell Knight, and there's a few other enemies down there. After we defeat the Phantom, a few other enemies have pushed that host back in that corner there, and yeah, made quick work. But the Burn O Flame trap at the bottom of the elevator, that's another great way to do it. This invasion doesn't have Burn O Flame in it, but this is one of my least favorite types of invasions, and it offers me a chance to make a funny commentary. A lot of times in video game DLC, you'll see a hint towards where the studio is going with their next game. And if you ever played Dark Souls 3, The Ringed City, and you did PvP there, you'll remember how every invasion was 8 minutes of people throwing firebombs at each other before the fight actually started. That was From Software hinting at Elden Ring. They were like, oh, this is, get used to that, because that's what it's going to be. Drives me crazy. It drives me crazy, those invasions, where people just throw stuff for like a solid 8 minutes before the fight actually starts. A completely unrelated tangent, but you know, it's good to break these things up. So I talked about the backstab Burn O Flame, and this also works for Wrath of Gold, and it also works for Noble's Presence, which are some spells that are cool, but maybe you don't have a chance to, you know, pop them off. If you, I know a lot of people, you know, backstabs are harder to do in Elden Ring than they have been, but I think people overstate how hard they are to do. They're another instance of a thing where it's like, just go for it, just try it. Especially one-handed glaive, running attacks, spells that like lock people in place. You can literally just walk around some stuff and backstab it. It just practice and try, you know. But you know, the thing is, people don't want. Why go for the backstab when you could get like a guaranteed Ash of War? And the answer is just for the style points. That's it. Is it efficient to go for the backstab? Probably not, unless you're on like a build that is made for that. But otherwise, you're never going to get a cool clip where you backstab somebody and then do Burn O Flame. Look at this He-Man. Absolutely top tier He-Man cosplay. Another instance is of Burn O Flame being perfect is like right here. This guy's too far away from me. He has nowhere to go, and he can't stop me from casting this because he's getting up off the ground from Giant's Flame Take Thee. A fantastic He-Man cosplay, though. It has to be said. This one's funny. Iframes as you spawn in. People still fall for this. They think like, oh, I will hit the invader as he spawns in. And I had never considered, like, why do they do that? And then someone pointed out, like, you can hit NPC invaders when they spawn in. Someone pointed that out to me, and I was like, oh, yeah, right, okay, that makes sense. So they're probably just like, they don't know if you're an NPC invader or a real invader until it's too late. So they just start swinging at you. And in that kind of instance, Burn O Flame just absolutely levels the playing field. It goes from being 3v1 to 2v1, but it's 2v1 with them at low health, which, you know, you can't ask for better odds than that. Another one that this one kind of shows it off, but it doesn't show it off as good as the He-Man clip, I don't think. When you use, like, Burn O Flame in a narrow corridor, this also works for Black Flame Ritual. If you're in a narrow corridor like this, and you manage to hit that spell, you manage to get it off, the spell behaves strangely, and it just puts the spell, like, everywhere, because it can't go out as far as it usually does, so it, like, wings out in different directions, which can lead to some pretty funny interactions. So if you're ever in a situation where you know, you're in a narrow corridor, like, go for it. Because there's nowhere for them to go, and odds are it'll probably, you know, spawn underneath them or around them in the case of Black Flame Ritual, whatever. Spells like that. The problem is, don't do it for spells like Death Lightning, because Death Lightning just gets ate by walls. It just goes away. It just doesn't work. And just sort of learning how spells behave and which ones you can use and which ones you shouldn't. This Phantom is invisible, and in this one we get a really cool Burno Flame against an invisible guy. We're going to go for the backstab, and this is going to give us another little wrinkle to think about. You know how when you get a parry or a backstab in PvP, the other Phantom, or like the teammate, will come over and just start swinging at you while you're in iframes, and a lot of times you can get, like, you know, free parries off of that and stuff like that. In the case here, we get he comes over, but like the invisible person comes over, but by the time they get to me, they get hit by the Burno Flame, which puts them at just a terrible position. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool clips, a bunch of fun invasions. I hope you enjoyed watching them, and maybe you learned something about just going for weird spells. Just go for it. Later, y'all.